Greetings, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Hard Talk HR. I'm your host, Mihaly Nagy. The coronavirus pandemic massively hit organizations, requiring companies to rethink the way they work and rethink the way they operate. So this is why probably never a better time to talk about leadership at turbulent times. My guest today will be Nigel Risner, the leadership coach and an author of Impact Theory and It's a Zoo Around Here. I invited Nigel to talk about leadership authenticity, how to lead with emotional awareness, how to lead with passion and care, and what is it that individuals can do in order to build leadership resilience and build a better future. If you liked today's episode, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Also visit our podcast page on Spreaker and Spotify. At Hard Talk HR, we bring you fresh ideas and inspiring content from around the world of work. Nigel Risner, it is an absolute delight and pleasure having you on the show. Right before we started the call, we talked about it. You actually finished another call with 16 CEOs from the US. So everybody's feeling the pain of the current pandemic. So the first question I popped in my mind is about leadership authenticity. How a leader can guide through the current change and disruptions we're facing in an authentic way, especially considering that people are losing their job. People will be losing their jobs, organizations are being restructured, and whatever we are experiencing potentially have a massive emotional toll on people. So what is it a leader can do to guide us through and lead us through this change in an authentic way?
Okay, so when I talk about authenticity, I do it in a slightly different way. So I have a phrase that says TTTTF, which I'm sure you know what it means, don't you?
I absolutely do. But if you could highlight details, I would much appreciate that.
So what it means is to tell the total truth faster. So we're in real uncertain terms, and as a leader, and let me remind everyone who's listening that we lead people and we manage things. So, people need leadership, especially in these times. Toilets don't need any leadership. All they need is toilet paper. They don't need leadership. So we need to make the first distinction between leadership and management. And if you're going to be a real leader and you understand authenticity, you've got to tell the total truth faster. And when people know what the truth is, they can deal with stuff. People can manage change. They can't deal with uncertainty. So we've never, ever in our lifetime seen this type of uncertainty. So what we've got to make sure is that whatever information we know, we can share. So, I've just been working with a company who has a $700,000 wage bill a month. It's obvious they're not going to be able to fund it for 6 months. And I was sharing today with a leadership team that I think we've got to be recognizing that nothing's going to change until at least the 1st of September. That is a long time where, even after 9/11 or the SARS virus, no one's ever had this unprecedented time where for 4 or 5 months, we don't know what's going to happen. So companies have got to literally look at every expense, but then say to the company, all of us have got to take a hit. What do we actually need to survive over the next 4 or 5 months? And I promise you, Mihaly, if I looked at your expenses, I could probably knock off 35% of your expenses in about half an hour.
You can knock off 35% of my expenses?
Well, you don't need the whole of your Sky satellite support system. You don't need daily newspapers. You don't need some of the things that you're doing. You could ring up your mortgage company and defer a third of the payment. There's lots of things you can do. The problem is in leadership, we're spent so worrying about what we can't do and we can't survive that you've got to start thinking, what can I do? So, I'm very lucky. I'm much older than you. I'm 57. I've got 3 months more of my mortgage to pay, and then I'm finished. But I just got a letter today because interest rates have come down that I'm going to save £180. I mean, that's a result. And I've only got 3 months to go. I'm nearly okay. But my PA, my secretary, my audio-visual team, the people who produce my books, they've got longer to go. So if they rang their bank and said, what's the minimum I can pay over the next 6 months? A lot of people are being very considerate and say, pay us 25%, 30%. They need the money, but nobody really wants to share their total truth. So one of the things I'm asking leadership teams to do is to sit down with their senior 5, or doing it like we're doing it by Zoom or Google Hangout or Team with Microsoft, whatever platform they've got, and face to face, because it's much more authentic to look in people's eyes and say, what do you really need? What's the bottom line amount of money you need to survive until the 1st of September? Are we going to ask you to take some holiday? You would have been taking holiday anyway. I know this isn't the way you wanted it, but what can we do to support you? And if every single person shared total truth, we'd get rid of some of this panic. You know, when you look at these videos of people going into stores and they're buying 800 toilet rolls and 400 paracetamol, and that's because they don't know what's going on, because nobody's telling us. And when we feel unsafe and we don't know about certainty, we panic. So if we could learn to calm it down by 5%. You know, I have a mother who's 87 who's in a home who, if she gets the virus, that could be it. So how do we self-isolate her? How do we make sure that people are being looked after? And it's by knowing the truth. The problem is most of us don't share the total truth because we're scared people can't handle it. People can handle the truth. Do you remember the film A Good Few Men? You know, with Jack Nicholson, Tom Cruise?
Absolutely.
You can't handle the truth. We can handle the truth, but we're so scared of upsetting people that we think we'll only tell them what they need to know. They know there's stuff going on in the world.
Let me stop you for a moment. It's not just about the truth of the situation we are talking about, but we are talking about potentially the truth about how a person, how the leader feels when it comes to dealing with such a situation. After all, you've mentioned that we are facing an unprecedented change and unprecedented uncertainty. So our vulnerability and being able to express this vulnerability, it's also quite an important leadership quality. Would you agree?
Never have we seen where leaders need to show vulnerability like they do today. And if you really understand vulnerability, vulnerability is a strength. There's a great TED talk by Brené Brown, and she talks about the power of vulnerability. What she's really adding on is that, so all the time that I'm sharing this message, people are going to be telling themselves stories. And it's those stories we need to manage. Because the minute you share to anybody anything, their brain goes into one or two things that I mentioned in my book, The Impact Code, coach versus commentator. So as we start talking, the brain goes, how do I help people in the future? Or is this going to harm me? I don't want to get into hierarchical needs with Maslow, but, you know, one of Maslow's hierarchical needs is that safety, that personal need of, can I survive? 95% of the world can survive very easily for 6 months if they just knew what basic meant. But nobody shares. You know, we've got 2 cars in my drive, so we only use 1 car. If I rang up my insurance company and said, it's going to be off the road for 6 months, can we not have insurance? They'd probably say yes. I've now to save another $400. It depends what you do and whether you're prepared to share total truth. And that's really what authenticity is, by the way. I just make my life a lot easier, as you know, because I can't use big words. Authenticity. That's like 5 syllables. I don't do that many. You know, I'm pretty simple with all my leadership groups, that if you just share truth and you share the stuff they need to hear, people will support you.
Wonderful.
And in most organizations I work with, 95% of the team want you to do well. They want the leader to tell us. There's always 1 or 2% that think everyone's hiding things. There's a conspiracy. You always wanted to get rid of us. You can't change those people.
So in the next segment, Nigel, I want to talk to you about trust and leadership responsibility. You see, trust, emotional connections, empathy, these are probably not the first 3 terms pops in people's mind when it comes to describing their leaders. Or more importantly, probably describing their bosses. And there's a big differentiator between bosses and leaders. Leaders might not be bosses, and leadership not necessarily has to carry a title. Nevertheless, trust, emotional connections, empathy, these terms now more important than ever before, especially when everybody's under so much pressure and so much stress. So based on your views and in your opinion, what is the best way to build trust and build resilience and find grit?
Okay, so I'm going to shock you now. You don't need to build trust, okay? Are you ready for this? You just trust. So, I did not think this Zoom presentation was going to go on. I trusted you it was going to happen. I didn't have in writing a formal contract and all the rest. I've worked with you for many, many years, so I just trust you. There is a chance you might let me down at a later stage, but if you have a team of people and you love your staff, and let me repeat that word, you love your staff and you trust your staff, you shouldn't have to worry about what they're doing. What's really interesting in the world today is that more and more people are now remote working. This should have been happening 5 years ago. Okay, so we would have been prepared. But the problem is many leaders didn't trust their staff to work at home because they thought they might be having cups of tea. My wife has literally just come in with shopping. So in theory, she's going to expect me to help her with the shopping. Even if that took 1 minute of the day, if you, Mihaly, trusted me and you knew I was going to come back in, which wasn't a live video per se, you'd say, go and help your wife. It's not a problem. Then come back in a minute's time. But we don't know what's going on. And we assume our staff are going to take the piss. They're not going to be at their desk. That most staff, if they worked from home, would get more done than going into the office. I don't know if you understand the statistics on this, but part-time women do a much bigger full-time job than most people in the workplace. So I'll repeat that. Part-time workers, especially women, do a full-time job because they feel guilty they're not in the office, they're not working as many hours, but they don't have as many breaks, they're not on Facebook, they're not playing computer games, they're getting on with their job. So we could have been doing remote working years ago if we had have understood the word trust. So I tell all of my staff, and I tell all of my teams, you either trust people or you don't, and trust is very much like pregnancy. You either are or you're not. No one's ever been a little bit pregnant. But if everyone who's listening to this presentation looked at their situation and thought, do I trust my staff? And if you do, let them get on with it. The problem is, if you're not sure if you trust your staff or not, you don't trust your staff. And so that's the first issue. Now, I tell people, if you don't trust your staff, you should fire them. It's that simple. You either inspire people or you fire them. There's no middle ground. And now's a really good opportunity to look at the people in your organization and think, do I trust them to work from home? Do I trust them to do the job they need to do? They don't have to be sat in an office from 9 till 5:30, having traveled an hour and a half by train to get to their workplace, have an hour for lunch, and then drive an hour and a half back. That's 4 hours a day that a lot of people in London are doing that has no meaning. I could do most of my work between 8:30 in the morning and 12. And I promise you I do more work than most people listening to this.
So speaking of which, Nigel, I'm actually quite curious to see, once this whole crazy situation is over, whether we shall be going back to the good old way of working, or remote work and working from home will become a new norm. But of course, it comes together with a lot of challenges. It's not just about leaders trusting their people, but it takes two for a tango. So people need to trust their leaders. But at the end of the way, we need to create the work environment which is the best for the individual, whether it's about working from home or going to the office every day.
Okay, so let me share the second part to that. You probably know from the animal work that I do, I'm a massive monkey. I need to interact with people. I want to play with people. I want to have communication with people. There's been surveys that organizations that have a coffee machine and they do self-service would prefer to pay money and have a barista coffee in a Starbucks or even in-house because there's social interaction. So there is 50% of your staff that need to physically connect with people. My wife and necessarily my PA are very happy on their own, in a room on their own, without necessarily seeing other people, because they're, as you may or may not know, they're the elephants. Elephants don't need to work with teams. And it's really important to understand that when we all get back to some sort of normality, a lot of organizations will say, you don't have to come in every day. We don't need all that space. Imagine if every single office building got rid of 30% of their chairs, 30% of the desks, and we had some sort of remote working facility, they would save money, people would have a better quality of life, and people would enjoy their jobs more. We've now been forced to do this instead of us doing it anyway. So there is no norm, but I think in 6 months' time or a year, hopefully sooner, people will realise you can manage without 99% of the staff all walking into an office.
So this will definitely call for a follow-up session to Shayla call maybe later sometime next week, because I know that most of our listeners have no idea what you're talking about when it comes to what it means being a monkey, being an elephant or a dolphin or a lion.
Share something very quickly. If we visualize ourselves as leaders, as a zookeeper, the job of a zookeeper has only one main fact. It's to feed the animals the food they want, not the food you have. So, you know, I'm a monkey. I know you're going to send me a bunch of bananas and chocolate when we finish this presentation by way of a thank you. If I was a lion, you'd be sending me a very expensive bottle of champagne, or you might even be sending some very nice whiskey. If I was an elephant, you'd be sending me vegetation and a recording of this with a taped transcript. And if I was a dolphin, we've been putting this on social media and saying how lovely we look. It's not that complicated to understand communication, but it is difficult to understand that people need different things depending on who they are.
Wonderful insights, Nigel. Thank you so much for sharing. Now, in the last segment, I want to shift the focus on the individual and talk about individual leadership. Your book, The Impact Code, it's not a new book, but it's a very timely book. It's a really great book to read in today's times. And in that book, there is a quote you say, "No one can make a brand new beginning, but everybody can start today to make a brand new ending." That's a very powerful message, because it's really about what is my responsibility as an individual. What is it that I'm going to do to change my future and change my destiny? The current situation, as tragic as it is in many cases, very often it's more about not the reality, but our perception and our interpretation of the reality, and that creates a mindset. So what I want to talk about, I want to find out from you, the impact code, how can it be applied in today's world, and how can it help individuals? What is it that individuals need to do in order to create a better future?
So let's be really honest. If you looked at where you are today, and that's all you can do, is that right now you're sitting in your office or your home, I'm sitting in my home, I've probably got $50 cash on me, I've got some food in my fridge, and I'm okay. Would I like $75? Yes. Would I like to be in a more plush office? Yes. But the reality is, this is where I am. So the first thing you need to know is, where are you and what have you actually got right now? And be honest and be really clear that life is not that bad. Now, I don't dispute for some people it is horrific, but for 90% of the world, we can manage with a lot less than we thought we could. The next part, though, is taking responsibility of ourselves, because responsibility is really the ability to respond to a situation. And as you may or may not remember, I have a formula that says E plus R equals O. So the event plus the response equals the outcome. So what's the event right now? The event right now is we need to be very careful who we meet. That's what the event is. There are some people, and my wife will be one of these, she's delighted she hasn't got to meet a load of people because she doesn't like that many people. For someone like me, I like partying. I want to go out. So I've just got to be careful and distance myself with who I'm out with. And then the outcome changes. But if you just blame the world, you blame the government, you blame the Chinese government, and then you blame your prime minister, you're giving away your response, you're giving away your energy, you're giving away your power. You can only control what your controllables. So I can't control the world, but I can control my emotional response. And when people recognize they are in charge of their response, their life moves on. That doesn't mean you can't be angry and pissed, that it's not fair. I mean, imagine how old are your children, Mihaly, remind me?
I have a 9-year-old and a 6.
Okay, so imagine it's their birthday party on Saturday. Of course they're going to be upset. Of course your wife's done lots of preparation for the party. I get all that. But it's not the end of the world. So you are allowed to feel upset and angry. But it's no use being angry for the next 3 months about this situation. So I'm not saying you can't have any empathy. You can't have any emotional baggage that goes with it. But let's be really honest. What's the truth? What's going on? So I'm upset for your child if it's on Saturday and all of a sudden the friends aren't going to be there. So you have to make the best party you can at home and have lots of fun and maybe do video presentations like this for all the kids. Trust me, they'll know how to do it better than we can. So that responsibility is to look at where we are right now, to understand it's not as bad. And if you spend your time doing what I call BMW, bitching, moaning and whining, nothing changes. So what can you do in today's world to make tomorrow 5% better? And that's, as you remember, I spend my life working with clients, organizations, big and small, to make them just a little bit better than they are. Now, I'm going to be a little bit rude here because somebody asked me the other day, what do I actually do with companies? And I replied, I make them slightly less shit. Because that's all you can do. You can either enhance what they're doing or take away some of their pain. You can't change the world today. And you can't change what we did yesterday. And we can't change what happened in China on the 9th of December. That's when the first person got affected. Some of us have waited 4 months for something to happen. This happened on the 9th of December. We've waited hoping it's going to be okay. If we were really truthful, these viruses are airborne, they're everywhere. We've just got to recognize that until at least September, this is it. So that's taking responsibility. The second thing we've got to do is we've got to look at ourselves and say, what could I do to make our lives a bit better? And use that passion and energy to enhance your situation and not to bring us down. Too many people are using the words, this isn't fair, it's not right. I wish it wasn't this way. Well, you know what? I'm sure we all wish it wasn't this way. This is the truth. This is what it is. And then the action part is, what can I do? So, do some shopping. Help your neighbor. Do some shopping. Make sure you've got your basics in. But you don't have to buy 500 toilet rolls.
So basically what you're saying is that we cannot change our circumstances, but we can certainly change how we respond to our circumstances. Our response, that determines our well-being, our happiness, our state of mind. Because at the end of the day, we just simply cannot have control over everything.
And that's what you just said there is key. We don't have control over everything, but we need to control our controllables and let go of what we can't control. We got told, when there's really good weather, this virus will go. Well, India right now has got some great weather, and Dubai's got some great weather, and they've got some hits. So you can only control what you can control. But then the last bit, which is really the best bit, is communication with your immediate self. So how you talk to yourself, how you talk to your family, how you talk to your leaders, is to understand that people are in a state of shock. And our job as a leader, as a parent, and you've got 2 kids, is just to say, we will get through this. And we may have to financially change some of the things. So I've just worked with a company literally 3 days ago where every single member of staff, including the chief exec, has taken a 40% pay cut. Every single person. But then they've guaranteed the jobs for 6 months.
Absolutely, and it's probably a very important reminder for our leaders, especially when we talk about business continuity. It's easy to manage cash, it's easy to manage your brand, but the hardest is to manage people. More importantly, lead people through this current situation, because you need to build people who build the business at the end of the day. And this is the right time now, what we are experiencing, to have the right leadership qualities to shine and the right leadership to lead us through to this crisis situation.
But it's also a time, you've mentioned I've written a couple of books. So I wrote a new book in November called The Zookeeper Rules for the Office. It took me about 4 years to write it because I never had the time. I've now got 3 months. So my trip to America in 2 weeks' time has been cancelled. I've got 2.5 weeks at home. I'm doing some of my presentations by Zoom. But I've got 2.5 weeks of doing nothing. Most people, if they had that time, would say, I wish I could write a book. I wish I could change my website. You've now got the time to do all those things you said, if only I had some time. You've now got the time. This is the time to look at your structure, look at your website, look at your material, look at how you train your staff. And we could do loads of that stuff now, and prices are probably going to be cheaper. If you were out your web designer, believe me, they'll be only too desperate for some money. I know that's not the answer, but all of us are having to cut back.
Thank you so much, Nigel. It's been absolute pleasure speaking with you. So, of course, as a result of this conversation, I can see another session coming up talking to you about zooming into the zookeeper role. Probably going to record it on Zoom again. Oh, that was very corny. Nevertheless, it's been absolute pleasure speaking with you. So until we meet again, my friend, take care and have a great day. And thank you everyone for watching.
And see you soon. Bye-bye.